All right, and it is 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Get Off My Lawn podcast. It's Tuesday night, and this is what we do in this time slot. We have got kind of a full panel tonight, and this is going to be a topic we've talked about in the past, but this is very, very pressing. Now, for those of you who do not live in Nebraska, Squib, this isn't going to be quite as won't have quite as much bearing for you as it does the rest of us. But here's the issue: this can happen anywhere, and if this can happen in Nebraska of all states, it can happen to any one of your states as well if you're not in Nebraska. So real quick here, we will let everybody say hi as we go through our panel. Last one that jumped in here was Rich White, so I haven't said hi to you yet. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
And next up, we've got Duke Liberty is in the house.
Howdy, howdy.
Thanks for being here, Duke. Travis P11 holding it down from Lexington, Nebraska.
Hey, man, thank you for the invite. I appreciate being able to participate in this discussion.
You betcha. Down in that urban area of Nebraska, we've got Rod Moeller joining us.
Good evening. Good to be back.
Glad to have you, Rod. Up there in the Mitten State, we've got Squibload. Maybe. For those of you who don't know, Squib is at work until about 9:30 Central Time, so he doesn't always get a chance.
Your sophisticated Nebraska internet froze up, dude.
Oh, I don't think mine did.
Yeah. No,
Well,
we got good internet over here.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, when you said Nebraska, I started falling asleep, but then I started thinking about what happened in Virginia, and yeah, you don't want it to happen in Nebraska or any other state. So
Exactly.
The lessons learned we can all share.
Exactly. All right. My neighbor to the south in that Kansas area, he is in Kansas anymore, Toto. We've got Gizzard Gary.
Hey, thanks for the invite. And just to support you guys across the state line, we want to keep that stuff as far away from here as possible.
That's right. Don't let that creep to the south.
No,
all right.
no.
And then we've got, we saved our ladies for last because they are definitely not the least. But you know what? Chivalry may not be dead, but these are empowered women. They don't need us to make them go first. So next up, we've got Patricia Harold joining us again. You've seen her face before, some of you.
Hi, everyone. Looking forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you for having us.
Glad you're here. And then we've also got a newcomer. We tried to have her here a couple weeks ago, and it just didn't work with the internet and everything. So she has gone to extreme measures tonight to join us. She had to get in her car, drive away from her house, and go out to the highway just to get enough service to join the chat. So we appreciate the sacrifices that you have made. This is the Nebraska rep to the DC Project. And if you don't know what the DC Project is, you need to look that up when the chat is over. Or if you can multitask, listen and look it up at the same time. But we've got Stephanie Schaefer joining us from the Panhandle of Nebraska.
Hello, John, and everybody else. Thank you for including me. I'm happy to be on here participating in this important discussion tonight.
It is that. All right. And real quick here, who do we have out in the chat? Now, if you are joining us, I know a lot of you have seen us lately on Facebook and maybe are new to the live podcast here on the YouTube side. So if you're watching right now and you're live, go ahead and make sure you're logged in on YouTube. You can join the live chat. You can actually drop comments. We will see them. If you put an @ symbol in front of somebody's screen name, then you'll tag them. It'll show up orange on their screen, and they'll see the comment a lot better. So if you have questions, make sure you tag. The best way to tag somebody is to tag Sandhills Sweetheart. She is my beautiful wife out there, and she holds it down in the chat side while I'm running my mouth. We like to say she does the typing and I do the talking. So out there in the chat, we've got, of course, my beautiful brides out there. Levi from Norfolk is in the house. Grim90 is here. We've got Gary doing double duty. Richard Hirsch and Pat Hirsch from Innervale, Nebraska are in the house. Welcome. Twins, identical twins, I've been told here. We've got Gun-Loving Grandpa, Guitar Man Pete's out there, Jay Brown, also a Nebraskan, Travis P11's out there, of course, Mr. Pearl Necklaces, and Rich White's out there. And in here, Obnoxious One thinks he's first, but he's actually Feisert. Stan from SS Pawn in Lexington, Nebraska is in the house. Seven Wonders. Who am I missing? Anybody yet? Jim Burgess from Texas is here. I tell you what, if you are out there in the chat and you're from Nebraska, please let us know where you are in Nebraska, what town you're in or near, or at least the county. If you don't want to give away your exact location, tell us what county you're coming from so that we can say hi to you. We want to have all the Nebraskans that we can have. So please, if you've got some time, take the link to this chat, share it with everybody, send it in a text or an email or whatever. Get all the Nebraskans we can on this chat. And the best part is, if you miss it live or if they miss it live, that link is good forever on YouTube until YouTube takes me away. So you can check it out anytime from now on. All right, we've got a few others out there. Tim Donahue from Millard is in the house. Justin Gibbons, I see him on Facebook all the time. Also in Dawson County. Travis, he's your neighbor. 10X Shooters is down there in that Beatrice area. So, all right. And if I'm not mistaken, 10X Shooters and 402 Outdoorsmen are related. So maybe we'll see 402 Outdoorsmen. Well, I'm not sure what's going to happen there. All righty. We're just going to get into this. Most of you are aware of this in Nebraska, but maybe your friends and relatives and neighbors are not aware what's happening in Lincoln. So we've got two terrible bills that have been introduced, the first of which has already passed the Judiciary Committee and is headed to the unicameral floor. We've also got one more that is being heard this Friday in Judiciary Committee. And if you can get to Lincoln that day, you really should try and show up and testify. I wish I could get that day off work, but it's a little too short notice. So in order to try and keep everything straight, because we've got a lot of people trying to make the rest of the state aware, and it's great. I see some really it's awesome to see how much the Nebraskans are banding together and forming a united front to fight some of these horrible laws that we're facing here in our state. Some of the posts I see out in the groups I'm part of on Facebook, sometimes people get a little confused as to which bill is which is the problem. We've got two different bills, LB 58 and LB 816. And I asked Rod to come tonight so that he could summarize, because he's better at this game than I am. Rod, we'll just let you have the floor for a second. Would you summarize each bill? Tell us which one is which, what they do, what they might possibly mean, and then we will get into, we'll discuss each one in turn as a roundtable of just what that might mean in Nebraska if those laws would get passed. So, Rod, we'll let you take it away.
Okay. Well, I'll start with 816, since that's the one that was introduced this session, and it's up for hearing on the 21st. Basically, they're calling it a suicide prevention bill. And, I think suicide prevention is something that, most of us think is an admirable goal. And a lot of us have been working towards, educational and other activities to try to prevent that. But this bill really misses the mark if that's really the goal. The only thing close to this is there is a requirement to include suicide prevention information in the Nebraska concealed handgun permit curriculum, as mandated by the Nebraska State Patrol. It would put a lot of new requirements on there. And I have no problem with including that. But everything else in the bill really doesn't seem to approach that topic. It does require new materials to be distributed to buyers by dealers for safety and suicide prevention. Again, I guess I don't have a problem with information being handed out. But these materials are going to be distributed by the Department of DHHS, Health and Human Services. They don't exactly have the best track record here in Nebraska. I don't know that I really trust them to create this stuff. It places a costly requirement on the Nebraska State Patrol to create a list of firearms that includes certain features. Things like a barrel shroud or a pistol grip or, any number of foldable stock, those types of things. It also requires that list be updated at least annually. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what the cost estimate for that might be, because that's going to be a huge undertaking for the State Patrol to do that. The other thing is, though, it requires that, that Nebraska firearm purchase certificate you have to have today in order to acquire a handgun in the state of Nebraska. Well, that would extend to most long guns. It would be by feature, but anything that's a semi-automatic, anything that has any number of different features, that same purchase certificate would be required in order to purchase a long gun. It raises the cost of that permit from the current $5 to $20. It mandates a minimum wait period. You cannot go to the sheriff's office, apply for the permit, and leave with it in hand. There's a minimum wait period of 48 hours before they can issue that permit. Currently, the permit must be issued within 3 days. This bill would extend that to be 5 days. So they could take up to 5 days now. And then one of the more disturbing things is individual sales of most firearms now would be prohibited at a gun show. At least face-to-face. It would require that a federal firearms licensed dealer handle the transfer of those private sales. Here's the worst part, and this is what really concerns me. Felony charges would apply to the gun show organizer if it were found that somebody violated that at their gun show. That's pretty disturbing. It's, to me, a disincentive to continue to have gun shows. That's kind of the high-level summary of 816. Did we want to talk about this before we move on to 58?
You know what? Let's just go ahead and do that. That way we won't get too far ahead of ourselves. So I'll start this off, and we won't go around the horn and be super organized because it's just going to take too long to ask everybody their thoughts, and most of us will probably kind of say the same things. So those of you who are new in the chat, I think Stephanie's the only new one we have out there on the panel. So as long as we don't walk on each other, just go ahead and jump in and talk, when somebody else isn't. And we will get everybody's thoughts and questions, and then we'll try and field any questions we have out there in the chat too about LB 816. So there's a couple things that bother me about that bill. I think that the felony charges for whoever organizes a gun show, if somebody else decides to break the law at that gun show, that is completely ludicrous and very, very alarming in my mind. And we all know what that is designed to do. That just means that nobody in their right mind is going to be brave enough to organize a gun show, and it's going to basically shut them down without actually having to pass a law that shuts down gun shows. And now some of you might be thinking, what's the big deal about gun shows? Some of you maybe haven't been to them, or some of you have and didn't see any good deals at a gun show. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't go to a gun show to get a good deal on a gun. But if you want to do some wheeling and dealing, some trading, swapping, things like that, they're a great place to do it. But they're a great place to make contacts. You might find out there's a gun store or an FFL in your area that you didn't even know about. They might have a table there. It's also a great place to just get together and celebrate the fact that we have the freedom to have gun shows in our country and in our state. And I think that they're very, very vital to the two-way community because they're kind of like just miniature rallies where everybody gets to show off their collections, and you might find something that you didn't know you needed or you've been looking for a long time. And yeah, if it's a brand new gun, you can probably find it online on sale, or Black Friday special is going to be a better price. But that doesn't keep the mom and pop shops going. And if it's something rare, you might only find it at a gun show. They might not. You might not find it anywhere else. So gun shows are great things to have. And aside from that, just the there's so much in there. Everything about that bill is wrong. I'm going to shut up and let everybody else kind of sound off on the rest of it.
Yeah, as somebody who lives in a different state, I think the idea that you guys need a permit to buy a handgun is ridiculous, and them extending it to a long gun would just make it astronomically more ridiculous.
The fact that we need a permit, I agree, Rich, is ridiculous. The whole idea behind it is when you buy your permit, if it's just the purchase permit, it's a $5 permit. You get it from your sheriff's department, or depending on the town, if you live in Norfolk, you go to Norfolk Police Department. You don't have to go to Madison down to the sheriff's office. But you run the background check and everything else right there on the spot. So anybody who has a valid handgun purchase permit, the background check's already done. So you can take that into a gun show and buy a gun from an FFL, and they don't have to take the time to run a background check on you at the gun show because the permit says the state has already signed off on your background check. And if you, for whatever reason, something would change and you would lose your handgun or your firearm privileges, you wouldn't have that permit. It's just like having your driver's license that gets revoked. You got to give it up to them.
We've got something similar here in Michigan. It used to be a lot more of a hassle. They've streamlined it, taken out a bunch of stuff, and they've made it where it's a lot more user-friendly. No, we don't like it, but it's been around for a long time, and it's really not that big of a deal. One day, hopefully, we can make it go away, but for the most part, it goes along the whole mindset of what kind of guns are the most used in crime? What kind of guns are most of the bad guys that aren't allowed to have guns already because they're already felons? They've already got a rap sheet. And what kind of gun is most likely to be stolen? And that's what they're concealing and they're taking to the place where they're going to commit a crime. It's a handgun. And that doesn't mean that you and I don't have a right to have a handgun or carry a handgun or conceal carry a handgun. But the laws like that, that's sort of the, I guess, justification, if you want to call it. I'm not defending what they're doing in the sense that I say I agree with it, but I understand why they have it there for handguns and not for long guns. So every time they come out and they say, you know, all these mass murders are committed with these AR-15s and stuff, and it's like less than 1% of deaths committed by bad guys using a firearm, blah, blah, blah. It's mostly handguns. I'm sure you guys would like to see it go away as much as we would here in Michigan.
Yeah, it's a pain in the neck, but I guess it's the price of doing business for now. A lot of people don't realize for a gun-friendly state, Nebraska is really not that gun-friendly when you compare us even to our neighbors that are gun-friendly. So almost all the way around us are states that are way more gun-friendly than us if you take Colorado and Iowa out of the mix.
Something I wanted to add about our permitting process that I think is kind of frustrating, and every county is a little bit different. So I'd love to hear how like Norfolk does things compared to what I'm used to seeing in Washington, Douglas, and Sarpy County. But here we have to go to the county sheriff's office, and well, Sarpy County, I think you can go to Bellevue and Papillion Police Department. But you can only apply for this permit between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And there's a lot of people that have a hard time getting off of work to be able to go down to the sheriff's office to apply, especially people that I know that work down at the state capitol, down at Lincoln, but yet they live in Douglas County. So, you know, what are they going to do? Tell their boss, well, hey, I'd like to go buy a gun. I need to go to the sheriff's office to apply for a permit. And I also noted when I was looking at some of this stuff, I noted that the current law specifies that you could apply for this permit by mail. I've never heard of anybody having done that successfully. So if anybody out there has been able to do that through the mail, I'd love to hear about that.
You mentioned the hours that you can apply it. Is that like just a Monday through Friday thing, or can you do it on weekends too?
It's a Monday through Friday.
All right. Does anybody else? I'm gonna specifically ask Trish and Stephanie and Travis, since you all are also in Nebraska. Any of you have anything that you want to add as far as LB 816?
I do.
You know, we were talking about. Okay, go ahead.
All right. For those of you who've seen me on here before, suicide prevention is a incredibly personal issue for which I am constantly attempting to bring awareness and education and resources to people. My husband passed by suicide, and I did not become a gun owner to the extent that I am now until after he passed. So I'm kind of a strange cookie in the sense that so many people are like, gosh, wouldn't you have hated guns, after he died? And no, I don't hate the guns. I hate everything that contributed to his passing. So that being said, there's an organization called the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, an absolutely awesome group of humans who I believe participated in the crafting of some of this material that went into 816, right? A suicide prevention bill. And in the same way, we ourselves are desperate to retain our rights and advocate for our rights and expand our rights. They are just as passionate as to find forms of solutions that can make a dent, right? A dent in the number of people who pass by falling victim to the darkness. And so all of the intentions of this bill have a ton of merit, but the application and the execution is of real concern to me, because here's the problem with so much of our politics. If you say you're against LB 816, the anti-suicide bill, then your character and your reputation is easily besmirched, right? How dare you be against an anti-suicide prevention bill? And that's the part that I dislike about the games that get played at the Unicameral. When we start talking about LB 58, it's the emergency protection order bill, which if people don't read the bill, I had a great conversation with a young lady who was like, well, this is all about domestic violence and trying to end domestic violence. And I said, no, it really doesn't have anything to do with domestic violence. We already have a ton of laws with regards to that. It's not domestic violence. And so it's these characterizations or mischaracterizations in the labels that basically starts you off with an incredibly misinformed populace. And so it's so important for our organizations and our advocates to continue to educate and really break this bill apart and show it for what it is, which is just a really poorly crafted bill with a lot of misinformation. I wondered if he even knew what half of the characteristics he decided to add to the list to make a rifle or a shotgun a restricted item. It's just really disappointing.
Well, and before I let Travis and Stephanie go, I just want to point out too, correct me if I'm wrong, those of you that are in the know here, but it adds the suicide prevention training to the curriculum for the concealed carry class, but it doesn't require a licensed mental health professional to teach that. And it also, those of you who are instructors, it seems like that's just a lot of extra crap you're going to have to learn and a lot of extra hoops to jump through just to teach a class that we are required to have to buy a permit that we need to exercise a right protected by the Constitution. And it just seems like it's adding more red tape instead of taking it away, which is what we want to do.
I think you hit the nail on the head. So I teach concealed carry classes. And frankly, do I know that I could probably do a really good job of anti-suicide prevention curriculum? I absolutely feel I could. However, it is an extremely sensitive topic. The way all of the materials and training are developed is with an incredible sense of sensitivity, because you're dealing with individuals along an entire spectrum where you don't know who's in your classroom, you don't know where they're coming from. And how you deliver this education will really either make a positive impact potentially, or maybe a negative impact. And again, like so many other bills that attempt to place firearms into a category as if we restrict these things, all of our societal ills are going to go away. They fail to look at the root cause for all of our issues in our society, whether it's poverty, economic disenfranchisement, racism, a lack of resiliency within our youth who don't know how to handle disappointment and their anger and their emotions, and they have helicopter parents and schools that don't hold them accountable, and all these other issues. It's literally a scapegoat bill. Oh, look, I'm doing something for suicide prevention, but it's not going to do anything.
But they always take the lazy way out.
Yeah,
Very true.
I would add on to what Trish said there. Talking about suicide prevention, we all want suicide prevention, right? Everybody says, let's prevent gun violence. Well, let's prevent violence altogether. We don't need to talk about the object. And the firearms industry is leading the way in a lot of those efforts to make schools safer, to prevent suicide. You've got groups like the one Trish mentioned. You've got Walk the Talk America. Here in Nebraska, one group working on suicide prevention, McKenna's Ray of Hope Foundation from Kearney. You've got Hold My Guns, who does responsible storage during mental health crisis. The firearms industry is already involved in that. If people would get behind us and work with us on these efforts, instead of working against us and seeing us as the opposition. Those are my thoughts on that.
Amen. And real quick, I just want to say hi to Jim. I didn't see that you snuck in here.
Yeah, I snuck in the back door right at like 9:03.
Cool.
So-
I didn't even see you jump in there. So, heck yeah.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Travis, you had some stuff you were going to say.
Yeah, just real quick here. I remember reading, I don't know if it was a year or two ago, there were some complaints about how much it actually costs for the background checks or whatever checks are necessary for that handgun purchase certificate to be issued. There were complaints about that because there was discussion on jacking up the prices a year or two ago. Imagine what it would go up to if they included long guns in that language. Because you're going to have people in Nebraska that won't buy a handgun, but they might buy a rifle or a shotgun, and now they got to go get that, and now we've got to add more red tape and more cost to the whole process. I mean, it's going to make the price of that thing go up exponentially. So that's one thing that I see as a concern, because the $5 thing is, you can deal with that, but if it goes up to $25, $45, $55, not to mention the whole cost of just being able to get our concealed carry permits after it's all said and done is just crazy. And then the other thing is, Rod, I got a question for you. I read, I don't know if this was like a KNOP or a Nebraska News thing when they were talking about 816. Was it going to do something that was going to redefine the firearm so we had to justify our ownership in some way, shape, or form? Maybe that was misinformation by the news. That there was something you had to have a public. You had to be able to justify ownership of your semi-automatic firearms. Is that something totally different or not?
That one's new to me. I didn't catch that in the bill.
I'll put a link to the article in the internal chat. You guys can just check it out real quick. So I thought it said 816 said that it was going to make you have to basically, when you go to purchase it, state why you think you need it or something. I don't know what it was. I'll find it real quick and I'll let you guys know.
Okay.
But no, that's it. That's all I have. So, yep.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Just my thoughts on this particular bill in general, and kind of from the Second Amendment, this is a right, it's a guaranteed right. My concern with this bill and many of the others is it only seeks to infringe further on the rights of, in the words of Charlie Cook, writing Shotgun from Charlie, law-abiding, background check passing people. This bill will do nothing at all to deter criminals from obtaining guns and committing crimes. And that's really what it comes down to. They are just going to further restrict all of us who already abide by the rules and not solve the problem.
Very, very good point. Yes, any law like this, especially this one, it seems like it's going to turn more people who ordinarily would be following the law overnight. Something you did yesterday, if you do it today, might make you a criminal, potentially a felon. And again, I mean, going back to the gun show organizer thing, I mean, I'm only responsible for telling people to follow the rules. It's up to them if they decide to break them or break the laws. I don't want to be held accountable and be become a felon just because somebody else chose to break a law at a gun show that I organized. That's completely bogus. And I had missed that. I hadn't even realized that was in there, Rod. So I'm glad that you were here to summarize that for us all.
Sometimes it feels like when they write these rules, they just put a bunch of regulations on the wall and they just throw darts, and whatever pops up on the darts is what they decide to tack on to that bill that they want to propose. I mean, they will go after the tiniest itty-bittiest little thing that they can do to take our rights away. I mean, or the biggest thing, such as the whole felony charges for gun shows. I mean, that's just insane, man.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, does anybody have anything else from the panel that you want to comment?
Yeah, I just find it interesting whenever you see somebody bringing up one of these anti-suicide bills. They bring up these statistics that come from organizations which talk about gun violence in general, and they throw murder and suicide both together. When I was in school getting my bachelor's degree, I did a report on the gun control issue in the United States, and one of the things I found out, when you put murder and suicide together, the U.S. ranks near the top of the list. But when you separate them on both murder and suicide, the U.S. drops down both lists dramatically. And on the suicide part, in and of itself, they weren't even counting just firearm suicides; they were counting all suicides together. And these are the statistics that these people quote when they're saying that we have issues. Not to downplay that we don't have a lot of people committing suicide or a lot of people committing murder, but these politicians and the anti-gun crowd, they want to inflate numbers to make them look worse than what they may actually be.
Yep, and that's cherry picking facts or cherry picking evidence. That's something that the left definitely is very good at doing. Although I would submit that both sides are guilty of doing that at certain times. So, okay. Any other comments? Going once, going twice. Couple comments out there in the chat I wanted to get to. There was one quite a while back. I don't remember now. It had to have been a Hirsch. It was either Pat Hirsch or Richard Hirsch had said that Webster County at the last commissioner meeting had just voted to become a 2A sanctuary county. So that is the third county now in Nebraska that I've heard of. Morrill was the first. I've been told Banner County. And I just learned tonight Webster County has joined the 2A sanctuary county list. So they are starting to grow. Word's getting out, and Nebraskans are preparing just in case. So one other question 10X shooters out there had asked, and I want to get everybody's take on this. Well, you know what? I'm gonna sit on this question 10X. I want to get everybody's take on both of these bills. So I will ask this when we're through LB 58 as well, because that way we can answer it in a two-part each of us. So. All right, so we will move right along, and Rod, we will let you summarize LB 58. Those of you who've been watching the podcast for quite a while, back when we were called 2A Tuesday, about a year ago, we had Rod as a guest, and he went through and explained in depth the LB 58 that was introduced, because this was actually introduced last, or at the beginning of the session last year. And so it hasn't changed. Well, it has changed, but not for the better. So Rod, we're going to let you take it away and talk to us about LB 58. Well, maybe. I think we just lost Rod. We will see if he makes it back in here. Hello?
The audio faded out there for a second.
Okay, yeah. I tell you what, we're going to we'll see if Rod makes it back in. This is why we have more than one person who's smarter than me on the panel. So, which is dang near all of you. But when it comes to the ins and the outs, Trish, I'm going to let you take this one then while we wait for Rod to make it back in here.
All right, so LB 58 is pretty much like every other horrific red flag bill that exists, is being pursued and or has passed across the nation. Here's the interesting thing. So during the hearing on the committee last year, we testified against it, and we made a great effort to obviously get it to stay in committee, because killing something in committee is a whole lot easier than killing it when it gets out to the floor. But basically, it is a litany of civil rights violations allowing a petitioner who happens to be connected to you, whether they live with you now, you were dating them, or were dating them, or are dating them, you have a baby with them, or you did have a baby with them, law enforcement and superintendents. They can put together a petition for things as simple as your Facebook pages are full of hate towards any protected class or even unprotected classes. They think you drink too much, you have firearms, you've gotten angry with them, you've gotten in an argument with them, and even though you have committed not one crime, not terroristic threats, not assault, not battery, not even simple battery, they can go to court, and an ex parte hearing, which means you're not present, can be heard. The judge is going to listen to the petitioner's evidence. They have to reach the threshold of preponderance of evidence, which is the lowest level of evidentiary proof. And again, the judge is only hearing from them. You're not there to defend yourself. So reaching that threshold is fairly easy. That judge is then going to take that evidence and determine whether or not he or she wants to take the risk of not granting the petitioner's request to basically put out an emergency protection order against you, which then means you're going to get a visit by law enforcement to basically secure and collect all of your firearms. You will then be notified that you can petition for a hearing within 14 days or longer from that original declaration in order to defend yourself. But because there's been no crime, there's no criminal charges, you're not afforded like the normal benefits of citizens who are innocent until proven guilty. For instance, if you can't afford an attorney, in a crime a criminal hearing, you can get a free one. One will be provided for you, but in this, you're not provided any judicial support from a free attorney. And you're going to have to present your counter arguments. And one of the challenges is you have to prove you're innocent from a crime that didn't happen. And again, judges are going to be hesitant to reverse their order. And so you could face up to a year or more of becoming a prohibited person without ever having committed a crime. Additionally, what's also awful about this bill is the petitioner, if they falsely accused you, they get a misdemeanor charge with a small fine and quote unquote up to 6 months in jail. And if they're not going to prosecute people that, do straw purchases that end up purchasing firearms that are used to kill a law enforcement officer, like what happened to Officer Roscoe, I highly doubt these petitioners are going to face any jail time, especially when they're already talking about no cash bail and releasing people on their own recognizance for everything besides like the most horrendous crimes. So in a nutshell, it's a laundry list of violations that none of us should stand for.
Absolutely.
And I just actually pulled up the text of this bill, and it's the same low bar to clear preponderance of the evidence. So it's not even clear and convincing evidence. It's just basically civil court style. We come in and take your rights.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but preponderance of evidence basically means if you can convince the judge that it's likely to happen, right?
Yeah, it's slightly above probable cause.
So, yeah.
Basically means slightly more that I think you might have convinced me that it's going to happen than not.
Yeah, more likely than not.
It's certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt standard. Yeah.
Yeah, and it violates so many different amendments other than the Second Amendment. Because everything that Tricia just said, you don't get to face your accuser. You don't get due process because due process includes a presumption of innocence, whereas this you have to fight to clear your name and prove your innocence. You don't get a court appointed or a public defender because you're not on trial for a crime. So you've lost. You've had the police show up to take your stuff away for a crime that you haven't done, and you've got to convince somebody that you had no intention of doing it. My biggest issue with any red flag law, be it this one or any other states, is that here's what's happening, and I'm going to just go out here and say this. Anybody who's trying to pass a red flag or an extreme risk protection order law, the way that it's written, such as in Nebraska, all they're trying to do is pee on your head and convince you that it's raining, because that is exactly what's happening. They're trying to say that this is something to keep the community safe and to keep the guns out of the hands of dangerous people. Well, again, at face value, nobody wants dangerous people to have access to weapons of any kind. Obviously, that's going to be the case. The problem is, they say that this is if somebody is deemed to be a threat to themselves or others. So let's just use me for an example, hypothetically. Somebody thinks that because I run my mouth every Tuesday night on a podcast and I say that I'm pro-gun and I am pro-capitalism and pro-freedom, and they think that I'm one of those, gun nuts. And so maybe now that the word is getting out across my state that I'm here in Norfolk doing this, maybe somebody in my community on my street decides that they're scared of me and they think I'm a gun nut and they think that I'm probably going to go off the deep end and hurt somebody. And there's a school a couple blocks away and, who knows what could happen bad, right? So they go to a judge and file one of these extreme risk protection orders against me that I don't know about in a hearing that I'm not invited to. And I don't get to know anything about it until Madison County Sheriff's Department knocks on my door, says, Mr. Sandhills, we're here to collect all your firearms because somebody decided that you might hurt somebody or yourself. And now what they don't say, but is also the truth, is that they're here to take the guns out of my house, but they will go ahead and leave me all my knives. They'll leave me all my blunt instruments, hammers, and whatnot. If I'm going to hurt myself, they'll leave anything that I could use to hurt myself. The bathtub stays, the toaster stays, electrical cords and belts, those all stay. Pills in the medicine cabinet, those all stay.
5,000-pound
the
weapon.
car and the car keys, those all stay. All they want is the guns, because clearly I can't hurt myself or anybody else if I don't have a firearm in the house. And what they do is they take this person who a judge has just signed an order stating that this is a dangerous person, and they let them walk free among us. Because clearly, if you take the guns out of the house, there's no more threat.
But now, see, if you did that with the person,
safety.
if you had the person taken away, that wouldn't be popular. Nobody would get behind that. Nobody would get behind their elected representative saying, yeah, we can take the people away if we think they're a danger to themselves or others. No, we'll just take one of the possible tools they could use.
Because
that's why they're able to do this. Is because
that would be unlawful.
Yeah, I don't have guns. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Yeah, why should anybody have guns? I don't have guns. But if it was like, wait a minute, they could take me away, and then they start thinking about how many crazy ex-girlfriends they had. Yeah, I'm not for this.
Well, and that's just it. If the red flag laws were such that the police came and knocked on your door and said, okay, somebody thinks that you're dangerous, you need to come with us. We're going to hold you for 72 hours. We're going to give you a psych eval and everything else. And a panel of trained medical and psychological experts is going to determine this. I wouldn't have near the issue with it. But if you call a bill something that is in the best interest for public safety, but what it really does is make it a way to go around do an end run around all of the amendments that say that you can't take stuff from people or lock them up when they haven't committed a crime yet. But this makes it legal to go and take the guns out of people's homes without breaking any laws, and according to the courts so far, without violating any amendments.
I brought that up in another chat about taking somebody away for 72 hours to evaluate it, and somebody corrected me in the chat and said that already exists. They already can do that. So if that's true, if they can actually do that, if they think that you're that much of a danger that they can detain you and have you evaluated and this, that, and the other for 72 hours, then what do we need this law for?
Yeah, that is already a law. As someone whose degree is in criminal justice, yeah, that's already a law. They can already.
So then what do we need a red flag law for? Then why don't they just do that every time somebody wants to call in?
Because that 72-hour law doesn't mean they can come in and take your guns. That's why. That's about getting the guns out of your hands. They don't care how they do it, just so they do it.
Yeah, I'd like to add on there something about the amount of time that this is in effect. So once this has been deemed in effect, it's in effect for 1 year from its initial issuance. And it goes on to say that a respondent may submit a written request for a hearing to terminate a final ERPO once every 12-month period. So if this gets renewed annually, you can only appeal it once. And if that doesn't work, well, you're shit out of luck for another year. There's no appealing it.
Exactly right. And there's also no language addressing the care that must be taken for the firearms that are removed from the home either. Which also means that if they want to take your guns, and maybe you've got a collection that's been handed down from generation to generation, maybe you've got priceless antique firearms in your home, and there's nothing in the bill that says that they're required to treat them and return them in the condition in which they were found. So they can take, all of your guns and just throw them into the back seat or trunk of a vehicle, let them rattle around and get scuffed and scratched and everything else, completely ruin the value of any of those collector items, and they're not responsible for anything, and they don't owe you any compensation for that if you would happen to ever get those back. And we know that guns are never stolen from evidence in police stations either.
Something I want to add real quick too is let's not forget about the possible threat to the lives of law enforcement that a red flag bill can create. You might have a stable, normal, rational human being that, for whatever reason, this ERPO has been dropped on them, and law enforcement shows up, and they finally decide at that moment that they feel that that's tyrannical. They feel that their rights and rules are being infringed against. They don't care at that point. They're going to make a stand against a tyrannical government. And they decide to not take the law in their own hands, but defend themselves, and they don't care. I mean, at what point? I mean, that could be the threat to sheriffs or law enforcement that are going to show up at your home and try to take those guns. You might say, well, a rational person would never do that. Well, but a patriot and citizen who thinks that their rights are being infringed upon will.
More to the point, if I'm not a law enforcement officer, and I don't know how to think like one, but I think that if I were, and I got told, hey, we're going to go serve this extreme risk protection order and take the guns out of this person's house, that the judge has just signed off that they are dangerous, all I'm going to hear is, we're going to go take the dangerous person's guns. So I'm going to be a little keyed up and be a little bit on edge when we knock on that door, provided it is a knock on the door and it's not a no knock. I don't know how those work, and it doesn't matter, because when that door opens, I'm just going to assume that there's somebody highly unstable and armed on the other side of it. And if the people on both sides of the door are keyed up and emotional or nervous or anything like that, the potential is there, like Travis just said. It's a very real potential for disaster. And that's the biggest issue I have with this law, is the potential for misuse. If this worked, every time the way that it is designed to work, and it only gets used against the people that really are dangerous, I wouldn't have as big an issue with it, even if it is just to take their guns away, which I still have a huge issue with. But we've already seen these be abused in other states. The potential is there for this law to be abused and be abused badly. And therein lies the problem, because if a law can be potentially abused, then we don't have the issue anymore of it's better to let a guilty man walk than imprison an innocent one. That is one of the premises that I was under the impression our justice system was founded upon. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not better to let a guilty man walk than to imprison an innocent one. Maybe it's better to just lock everybody up just in case they might have done something bad in the future. That's the road we're going down anyway.
Yeah, you're talking about the abuse of the thing. What state was it just recently? Maryland, where a woman tried using the red flag laws against the officer who killed her son in a suicide by cop situation.
I think Colorado.
Was it Colorado?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't remember what.
So yeah, it was Colorado.
Okay,
and they're actually filing charges against her. But I think that is.
She's been arrested.
I think it's a rare occurrence that somebody will actually have those charges filed.
Yeah. Well, they mess with the wrong people. They abused this against law enforcement. So you have the I don't want to badmouth law enforcement, but you have the kind of the blue line ranks closed around that one.
Two of the biggest concerns that I have with this bill, in addition to the numerous rights violated by it, are things like disarming victims. So if you've got somebody, let's take me for example, okay, I have this crazy ex-boyfriend, crazy ex-husband, stalker, just completely psycho, should have never gotten wrapped up in a relationship with him to begin with. I've ended it, but he won't leave me alone. I'm carrying a gun, I want to defend myself, and he wants to disarm me so that he can come in and harm me. Does he care if he's going to be charged with a misdemeanor? If he really wants to hurt me and get to me, it's nothing to him. It's going to be a slap on the wrist. That's what we're seeing in our justice system all the time right now. So you see victims being disarmed and then they're defenseless. And they've got to then defend themselves in court and spend the money, the undue hardship. And the other real concern that I see with it is a reluctance on the behalf of some people to seek mental health treatment. I've got a friend who watched her husband be murdered in front of her by her stalker. She was in a gun-free zone, left her gun in her vehicle because that's what she was told she has to do, and her stalker murdered her. Do you think that she needed to seek some help from a counselor after she watched her husband be murdered in front of her? Do you think it's fair that maybe she was depressed and had some issues going on? What happens when people have those types of things happen and they are afraid to go talk to somebody, to let people know that they need help because they think somebody's going to come take their guns? We've just created a bigger issue than the one that we've already got.
And not only that, but to build on your first point, Stephanie, I can very much see that. I've got a friend who got out of an abusive relationship and just recently was granted an actual protection order. I don't know the difference between protection order and restraining order, but the kid's dad can no longer come to her house legally, even after 8 years of being divorced. He still well, not to this day, but just recently would still come to the house and just walk in the door drunk and start yelling and causing a scene. She finally, and trying still to intimidate her as much as he could with another, grown man now in that house. But the thing is, she finally got the judge to grant the protection order against her ex-husband. So now legally he cannot come to the house anymore or contact her or be near her. We all know that that's just a piece of paper if he decides he's going to do it. But more to the point, what about the people that are still in these abusive relationships? And the abuser is typically not only abusive in one way. So if there's a spouse that's getting battered and physically beaten, typically, from what I understand, there's a lot of abuse, mental and psychological abuse going on as well. It's not just physical, which means that typically the abuser is quite manipulative, and most of the time they're pretty smart cookies. Honestly, they're too smart for their spouse's good. But what if they plan ahead? We've got this law in place, and they decide they want to go ahead and lay the groundwork. So if something ever happens and she gets away from him, he's already called the cops on her multiple times and has it on record that she attacked him. And I've known of those relationships happening where she's getting the crap beat out of her. He calls the cops, and she's the one that gets hauled away, because in a domestic call in the state of Nebraska, somebody has to get hauled away.
Yeah. Here in West Virginia, I had a neighbor who his wife started beating on him. She called the cops, and he was the one taken away. Even though the paramedics were telling the officers that from the looks of the injuries, he was the one that was attacked, and the injuries on her were defensive. He was still the one that was arrested for it. It's the opposite of what you were just saying, but it's the same situation.
Right, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's the man or the woman, or two men or two women. It doesn't matter. The point is that the abuser typically projects onto the abusee. When the cops show up, they're the ones that make it look like they're the victim. Yeah. And so we've already got now a record of the cops, being told that, well, this is the person who attacked me. So now let's fast forward a couple years. She finally got out of that house. The relationship is over. He goes to a judge and says, she was plumb nuts. She attacked me all the time. She threatened to kill me. She threatened to shoot me. And I think that you should probably look into removing all the firearms from her house. ERPO gets granted, served. She's disarmed. It doesn't matter if there's a restraining order or a protection order in place at this point. There's nothing to stop him if he comes in the door. Well, there's still things to stop him, but nothing's going to stop him like a sucking chest wound. And that has just been taken off the table. She's been disarmed because he planned ahead and disarmed her before she ever got away from him. All right. Any other comments on LB 58?
I had dropped off earlier because of a network problem. So I didn't hear Patricia's first minute or two. Trish, did you mention that this had been replaced with new language in Amendment 2123?
No, I would love for you to talk about that process, because that's another thing that got us angry.
Okay. And I mainly bring it up specifically because somebody had mentioned that he had just gone out and looked at LB 58. If you go to the nebraskalegislature.gov website in the upper right-hand corner where you can search for a bill and you search for LB 58, it'll come up with the whole history. And the most current thing is that when it came out of committee, Amendment AM 2123 had been filed. And they basically struck the entire bill and replaced it with this amended language. Everything that we've talked about is still valid. There's not a whole lot of changes to it, but if you wanted to see what is currently up to be debated on the floor, it's going to be the language from the amended version. So be sure to look at that latest language, because that's what will go to the
That's
floor.
Weird, because when I clicked
then speaking of amendments,
I'm sorry, when I clicked that link, it said, I'm going to try it again, 2123. It says, I don't have permission to access this resource. I don't know if there's a login required or.
Oh, really? Well, I
Can
was
you
having
put that
problems.
link in the side chat, Jim?
I was having problems earlier accessing the legislature's website, so I don't know. But
Either
were you
so
searching
many
for
people are on it right
2123,
now.
or did you?
Yep.
Yeah, I was looking at, so I put the link in the side chat. That's the link to Amendment 2123, and it came up forbidden, 403.
Well, there was issues with me even accessing the legislature's website about 4 hours ago. So I don't know if they're doing maintenance on the website or what's going on.
Yeah, conveniently.
Okay, so about amendments, real quick. Well, it could be that they heard that you were having this discussion this evening, and so they're trying to prevent us from seeing it.
Yeah, I highly doubt I have that kind of pull with the state of Nebraska. But go ahead, Rod. We'll let you talk.
So about the amendment thing. So here's a frustrating thing. Getting back to 816, there's a chance that Senator McAllister is going to introduce an amendment, and he's going to introduce that when the bill is heard in the Judiciary Committee hearing. And the frustrating part with that is if we can't see the amended language before the hearing, it's very difficult to prepare your testimony. I had a situation a couple of years ago. I think it was the Pansing Brooks bill where she wanted to ban suppressors. And a particular senator on the committee was basically scolding people. She's already introduced an amendment stripping that from the language. You do not need to be speaking about that part of the bill. And I mean, he didn't say that to me. It was other people who were testifying before I got up there. But if it were me, I just wanted to say, well, Senator, I don't trust you. Just because an amendment was introduced doesn't mean that it's going to actually be passed through. So I want to have my voice heard because I don't trust any of you. But anyway, just pointing out that there's talk around the Capitol that there may be an amendment to 816 introduced at the time of the hearing. And so if you're going to show up, it may require some on-the-fly adjustments to your testimony.
I wish I could make it down this Friday, but with work and everything else, it's not going to happen. Or whichever Friday. Yeah, next Friday. Anyway, I know I can't make it on the 21st. I wish I could. I'd love to be there. Those of you who can, please go testify. The more of us that testify against these laws, the more likely our legislators are to listen. It's not enough just to reach out to your legislator. We need to get in front of all of them, and they all need to know. The whole state needs to know that we don't want this. So does anybody have anything else they want to add as far as LB 58, the red flag law, before I move on here? Because I want to get to 10X Shooter's question now.
All right, I just have one last thing to say. So the Nebraska firearm owners, we're your voice, but your voice is your voice. And I want to emphasize the importance of each and every single citizen in the state of Nebraska to voice their stance on LB 58 and LB 816. The level of activism in this state, I want to tell you, it's surging. You got to catch this wave and surf it. Follow up your emails with a call. The power of a phone call, 3 minutes to, even if you're talking to the legislative aide to state your case against LB 58 or 816, makes a huge difference. For years, we've been a sleeping giant. That giant has now awoken, and you want to get on board. So please activate yourself and make those phone calls.
Absolutely. Because, Rod, who is the gun lobby?
You are the gun lobby. We all are the gun lobby.
We just had that here a few weeks ago. We had Rod here talking about how we all are the gun lobby, and I've posted a link to that chat over on the YouTube side there. So if you missed that, there's the link for that. You can go check that out when we're done here.
Yeah, real quick.
All right. Any other?
If I was at one of these meetings and some senator told me I didn't have to read a particular part of the legislation, my response would be, Senator, respectfully, go suck on a lemon. Only I might not have used the word lemon.
Yeah, Case, just that reminds me, if you go to testify in Lincoln, make sure that your language is respectful. You don't get thrown out. You're no good to us if you get tossed. And you want to make sure that you portray pro-gun people in a positive light. But to your point, sometimes I think our legislators need to remember that they work for us, not the other way around. They are not the most important people in the room. The ones in the gallery are. All right. Any other comments before we go to 10X's question? All right. So now, it's a two-part question. I will let. Yeah. Night Strike. What's up?
Hey, how's it going? I have one comment. Two comments really. Thank you for using GunTube Chamber. 1, and 2, shall not be infringed.
All right, and thanks for not blowing out my eardrums.
Yeah.
Some of you are new here and you haven't seen Night Strike before, but he has a tendency to scream that into his microphone at the top of his lungs, which is great. We love it when he does it. It's kind of his thing. But right now my ears are.
I've read the dictionary and I've read the words written on the Constitution. And by the way, the meaning of the words haven't changed for over 200 years. Why is it such a hard concept for people to understand? I don't understand this, but
I would like to thank the poor conservative for sending me a stack of these. This document is not big. It doesn't take long to read. You should come up with a copy of it. You can go online and read it for free. Read it. The more people that know what the Constitution says, the less likely unconstitutional laws are to be passed because we won't stand for it. But if you don't know what it says, you don't know what it says you can and can't do, or the government can and cannot do. So, all right. Moving right along. Now, this is a two-part question. We will let anybody answer it, either part or both. Just don't walk on each other here. But 10X Shooters wanted to know, how likely are these laws to pass? Now, before everybody else jumps in, I'm going to say this, and it's not going to be all that profound, but the more people who know about this and the more people who speak out against this, the less likely these are to pass. Because our legislators, by and large in Nebraska, they do want to know what we think. And they will listen to us if we are loud enough. But the wheel has to squeak before it gets any grease. So it is up to each one of us as Nebraskans to reach out to anyone and everyone who will listen. And that means sometimes talking to people that maybe it's not always easy to get that conversation started at the coffee shop or when you're standing in line or whatever. Some of us don't want to be painted as nuts, but at the same time, all you have to do is again, this is a great chat. There's so many resources out there that besides me who explain these bills for what they really are. So find those links and bookmark them on your phone, and that way you can have that conversation with somebody and just say, here, you don't have to take my word for it. Be like LeVar Burton. Those of us who are old enough to remember him, you don't have to take my word for it. And then give them the link. Let them go check these out for themselves, and they can see what's happening. And I would love it if everybody would share the heck out of this chat tonight, because that lets YouTube know that y'all love me. So I appreciate it. So now, that being said, in all honesty, I'm going to let the rest of you who kind of have your finger on the pulse of some of the other legislators across the state answer this, and everybody can have a chance to answer. So what is the likelihood that these actually pass? Don't all go at once, though.
And nobody wants to say they're not gonna because, look at Virginia, right?
Well, hopefully that's just it. Let me throw out
the media is going to start to spin it, and it's going to come up in family discussions and stuff. And I think people need to realize there's a lot more involved in these bills than just the title. Okay.
Well, it doesn't seem like
it's a lot more than what the title says there.
It doesn't seem like Nebraska had a big flip recently, right? So My take, outside looking in, would be probably not during this session, but there's more to it than just. There's always a chance a bad bill will get through, so you should stand against it. But at the same time, it's also marketing. You know, these anti-Second Amendment types will put these things through, knowing they won't pass, assuming they won't pass, and then they'll turn around in the next election cycle and say to the uninformed or the willfully uninformed, look at the horrible things that these other people are doing because they didn't pass our safety bills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know, so there's always that angle to look out for too.
Yeah, never overlook the.
No major legislation generally gets enacted the first time it comes up. I mean, how many years did they have to keep going after and after and after before they finally passed the Concealed Handgun Permit Act in 2006? It was quite a few years that they kept trying before that finally passed. So if we defeat it this time, we're going to be fighting the same battle again. And every election cycle, we're losing ground. We're getting more and more people that are not going to vote for our side getting elected into these positions down there.
Yeah,
Well,
never overlook the power of stupidity at times too, or the ability for a politician to say one thing and do another.
And keep
We've
in
had
mind,
Republicans on the national level. Sorry,
no, go ahead.
Okay. We've had Republicans on the national stage endorse these red flag laws, and of all states, Indiana was the first one to have a red flag law. So if it can happen there, it can happen in any other state too. That's why you got to keep vigilant.
Yeah, and Indiana's that evil gun state that all of the guns in that are being used to kill people in Chicago come from Indiana, right? So keep this in mind too, especially those of us here in Nebraska, because this isn't true for every state, but it is true in my state. We are a rural state by and large, but all of our rural communities and our small communities are getting smaller. More people are leaving these small agricultural communities than are coming back. They'll leave, they'll go to school, maybe one or two come back, but the other 15 to 20 to 50 that graduated don't. And so Lincoln and Omaha are growing, and most of the other towns in the state, most of them are not. And so keep in mind that with populations and potential gerrymandering and things like that, we could one day be facing a situation where Omaha and Lincoln really do start making all the laws for us statewide. And we're a couple bad election cycles away from becoming Virginia, where we are one anti-gun governor away from not vetoing these. Now, from everything that I've heard, and I haven't reached out yet directly to Governor Pete Ricketts, but my understanding is he has no intention of ever signing these bills were they to hit his desk, but we cannot rely on that. I'm a hockey fan. Every hockey team has a goalie. You've also got two people that skate in front of that goalie and play defense, because you don't want the goalie to be the only person in charge of keeping the puck out of your net. And we don't want the governor to be the only one whose job it is to stop this, because if he doesn't know that we oppose this, there's no reason for him to veto it. If he thinks it's the will of the people, then he's going to go ahead and let it through too. Maybe not this governor, but potentially a good governor is going to do the things that his state wants him to do, right? Or her. And so it's not enough just to reach out to your district's senator. You've got to reach out to the people on the Judiciary Committee. Maybe it'll fall on deaf ears right now with the people on the current committee, but it's still our job to do it and reach out to them. And the way that Rod had said this here a few weeks back, if you've got interests in more districts than just the one where you live, maybe you've got family in a different part of the state, or you own property in a different part of the state, and there are actually more than one state senator who you belong to their constituency, reach out to all of them and explain to them that you really do belong, or your voice does belong to them as well, and let them know. So it's all of our job to keep this from happening, whether or not it's likely to pass a vote in the unicameral. Now, anybody else, go ahead and jump in there with the likelihood that these bills really do get voted in the unicameral.
My response would be never say never. That's what gets you in trouble. And so what we really need to make sure that we're doing is recognizing we need to have our voices heard, not just to our senators, to our neighbors, to the people that we work with, to our friends, family. Make sure that we're letting people know and backing that up and telling them why. And also, if you have any interest in running for office, whether it be at the local level, the state level, the federal level, do it. Get involved at that level, or encourage somebody to get involved at that level, because that's what it's going to take ultimately, is people who have our values and share our beliefs continuing to stay involved and pushing for these things that we believe in.
Very, very good point. And it's different. I mean, I have no desire to run for office, but had I that desire, living in Norfolk like I do, the speaker of the legislature is my state senator, and there's somebody running against him this year that is highly likely to win that election. I am a nobody, and nobody here knows me, so it's not as likely that I would have any luck with the campaign, because I don't have the funding or the backing that I would need to wage a campaign here. But those of you that are out in small towns and in sparsely populated counties, I know how that works. You know everybody within a 50-mile radius. Everybody knows everybody. Most of you help out with brandings and everything else with each other. So it's not like you don't have a population base and a voting base if they like you and they know that you're a straight shooter, and that if you make a promise, you intend to keep it, or you'll at least explain why it didn't work that way. That's all you really need. I know campaigns can be expensive, so clearly some funding needs to be there, but it's a thankless job, but somebody's got to do it. Why don't we have some more people willing to be the change that the state needs, or to keep unwanted changes from coming in? So yeah, that's a call to action to everybody listening. Maybe it's not such a crazy thing that one day you might run for office. I'm still thinking that Senator P11 would be it's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it?
Well, everybody already calls me King Travi, so I guess I'm just kind of going with that. But yeah, I do agree. I
you gonna run for king?
I agree totally.
I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. Representative Anderson sounds pretty good.
Nah, never happened. We don't have representatives in our state.
Oh, you don't? All right.
Nope, we are the only state in the union that has one house. Well, we have two houses. I like to say that we have our unicameral, which is our state senators, and the people, the voters, are the second house. We are the ones that hold them accountable, and we have a ballot initiative in our state. So if the lawmakers decide to do away with the death penalty, the voters can petition to have it put back on the ballot, vote it back in, because that happened.
Awesome.
So yes, we do have a voice. We do have power as Nebraskans, and we can force the unicameral into doing what we want them to do, or we'll go over their head and let the rest of us decide on a ballot. We just have to circulate petitions, get enough registered voters to sign that we do want to vote on this fall. So, all right. Any other comments as to the likelihood of these passing? And in all honesty, those of you who are talking to some of the senators or have heard from some of the different senators around, what's the general consensus from not only the Lincoln and Omaha areas, but across the state? All right. And out in the chat, if you know if you've been in contact with your senator and you heard back from them, let us know too, so that we can see what's going on. I know that Senator Slama has been very, very vocal against these bills. She seems to be a very good egg. We need more like her. And also, out where my dad lives in, I can't name the district now, but that is where Senator Brewer resides too. And so he's also very, very pro 2A. In fact, what was it? He just recently won the World Long Range Shooting Championship or something to that effect.
It was like a doubles tournament thing with him and a spotter, or they have a whole bunch of challenges you have to accomplish and stuff. Yeah, over in Russia or something like that. Is that where they're Ukraine or something?
Yeah. So that the world champion, he's my dad's state senator. And he's very, very against both of these bills as well. So, Senator Merman said no. Dorn is concerned. He's reversed course in the past, though. Brewer says no on both. Yes. Tank Shooter says Dorn says he needs more information before he can cast his vote. Matt Williams says no on both. Arch in Papillion isn't sure. Those of you in Papillion, contact Senator Arch. Make sure that that your voice is heard, because when they're unsure, maybe we can get them off the fence onto the right side of it. All right. Any other comments on anything that we've talked about? Something that you missed, you wanted to get in there. Maybe you saw it out in the chat and I missed it. Go ahead before we wrap it up. And does anybody have anything else they want to add in there?
You mentioned that you don't have to testify. You can come in and be present on the 21st if you don't want to talk.
All right. So out there in the chat, my wife was asking some questions. Yes, if you don't want to testify, you don't want to get up in front of everybody and speak, or you don't know what to say, or you're not good at public speaking, that's okay. But if you can make it to the Capitol, you can sign in as either for or against or neutral on whatever bill is being heard. It's okay to go there, sign in as against it, and just be in the gallery and be unheard. That's okay. But they still count every person that shows up as for, against, or neutral. So make sure that we fill that gallery with people who are against LB 816 on the 21st. And do we have a date yet? Do we know when LB 58 will hit the floor, or are we still waiting to hear?
We're still waiting to hear. A lot of it comes down to, is Senator Moorfield going to prioritize this? Is he going to make it his priority bill? And if he does, then it'll probably be heard within 10 days of him making that designation. If he doesn't, then it likely won't even come up on the agenda, because priority bills go first.
Okay. All right. Also, on the 21st, outside the Capitol, there will be an impromptu rally for anybody who is interested in coming to testify or just come and be counted. So, you have to sign in with your name, and it's public record that you were there. But I think that this is something you don't need to be scared of, that you took a stand, especially if you're listening to this chat. There's a pretty good chance you're against these bills as well. So if you can make it to Lincoln, you can attend the rally, and then you can go inside and sign in and let everybody forever understand that you opposed these bills. So that's very important to do. Real quick, we don't have details locked down in the slightest yet, but we are planning a big rally, a huge rally. We want to duplicate Richmond, only we don't think 20,000 is enough, so we're going to try and get 50,000 people in downtown Lincoln. I doubt that'll happen. We don't have the urgency here that they had in Richmond on Lobby Day, but everybody who hears my voice is invited to come to the rally. I can't tell you the date yet. It's not locked into stone. we need to secure the proper permits first to make sure that we can be on the White House, on the Capitol building lawn on that day. But this much I can tell you, it's gonna be, we're shooting for a time between Memorial Day and Independence Day, somewhere in that time frame between Memorial Day and Independence Day. So planning on June, that's what that means.
I know it's a club, but man, do you imagine a rally on the White House Rose Garden?
Well, no, because nobody'd get in the fence. Yeah, that's
how epic would it be though if we could actually pull that one off?
Yeah, wow. How about? I don't know. I'm pretty sure we could get the guy that lives there to come speak at that one. But will the rally be armed? I tell you what, all the details will be to follow. Before we say yes or no, we're going to get the exact laws so that we can quote them before we tell people misinformation, Zach. So just stay tuned. If you are not following me on Facebook, it's the same as the channel here, Sandhills Shooter. Go like us on Facebook, or there are two groups, and I don't have them pulled up, but if somebody can post the links in the YouTube chat there. Two great groups to follow. One of them is Friends of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. They are everything in Nebraska that the NRA is not in the U.S. NFOA, Trish is currently president. Rod's been on the board of directors in the past. They're both members. I'm a member. Travis is a member. You can all be members. It's free, and you don't have to be a Nebraskan. Being a Nebraskan just gets you into certain forums that people from out of state don't get to on the NFOA website. But go to nebraskafirearms.org and check that out. There's also a Nebraska Firearms Owners Association page on Facebook you can follow. But join the group Friends of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association and join the group Nebraskans for the Second Amendment. Those are great groups, and those will be the first two places where details get posted for the rally, along with my page, NFOA page, all those places too. So definitely look for details on that. It's going to be coming up. As soon as we have details, we'll get them out. We have a committee of people that are planning this, but we can't do much until we for sure lock the date in. Then we can move forward with more of the rest of the stuff. Before I forget, there's a pretty girl frantically waving at me to not forget her question. So,
I was going to say that Egan's having a rally on the 21st. Carvings by Levi just
Levi out there in the chat is saying, where did I miss it? Oh, DE Guns in Lincoln is planning a rally as well. Yes, I believe they're having something going on after the hearing at the Capitol. So there'll be a rally outside.
They're gonna gather before. Yeah.
Before? Okay. So just go to the Capitol on the 21st. Yeah. But then I do know that DE Guns is having some cool stuff happening out at their range after the fact too. They're out east of Lincoln. So go to the Capitol, check that out. And then check DE Guns Facebook page for details on what they're doing. So, all right. Does anybody have anything else they want to mention before we start to wrap things up?
Yeah, Defense Dad out there in the YouTube side said that D Guns is going to be busing people from their store to the Capitol. So if you need someplace to park, I guess you can park at their store, and they'll make sure you have transportation to the rally.
Parking can be an issue in downtown Lincoln. So yeah, go to DE Guns Facebook page, talk to them about the details there. They're out east of town. They're kind of out in the country. When you think they can't possibly still be out there, that you've gone too far and you missed it, go a couple more miles and you'll see them. They're very easy to get to out there, but great place to park, get bussed in, get bussed back, and then you're already at the range. So you can celebrate our freedom as long as we still have it out there at their range too. So go check that out. So, all right, we're going to let everybody just say goodnight, wrap anything up, anything that you want to mention, or if you've got whether it's a YouTube channel or something else in the works that's going on with you, we'll let you just throw those shameless plugs out there real quick. So this time we will start with the ladies. We'll start with Stephanie. Thanks for being here, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, just to wrap up, I would remind everybody how important it is to have your voice heard. Make sure that you're speaking up. We are being opposed by a $60 million Michael Bloomberg budget. So it is important that every voice be heard. Firearms industry is leading the way in safety. We've got NSSF, Project Child Safe. They've got a new program called Gun Owners Care. We've got Eddie Eagle, Faster Saves Lives, Walk the Talk America, Kids Safe Foundation, Hold My Guns. All of those things are doing great work already in the space. So again, thank you for having me. You can find me, my website is defcompusa.com or on Facebook at Stephanie Schaefer, Firearms Instructor and Competitive Shooter.
Awesome. Yeah, and you brought up a very good point that I meant to mention. It was talked about out in the YouTube chat there. I don't know about other state senators, but I do know that Senator Adam Morfeld, the person who introduced LB 58, the red flag law we've been talking about, did get campaign donations from Michael Bloomberg, whether directly or one of his organizations. I don't remember, but Bloomberg's fingerprints are all over LB 58. Don't think that they're not. He's in our state too, or he's trying to get into our state too. Spread kind of like a fungus. So, all right. Next up, the other lady who was out there in the panel, Trish. Thanks for being here with us.
All right. Let me make sure I'm unmuted. There I am. Okay. So there's two opportunities. I think this podcast was fantastic to help everybody get educated. When you're educated, you're empowered. The Nebraska Firearm Owners Association would like to invite you if you're in Omaha or Lincoln. So we have an event in Lincoln on February 18th at the Nebraska Game and Parks location at 4703 North 44th Street. It starts at 6. Basically, it's a presentation about grassroots activism, LB 816, LB 58, and what you can do to stop these bills from happening. And then if you're in the Omaha area, Monday, February 17th, presenting the same seminar at the Omaha Gun Club on 82nd and Center, basically 2828 South 82nd Street at 6 p.m. Omaha Gun Club on February 18th at the Nebraska Game and Parks building. Hope you guys can join us. It should be really good. Great opportunity to meet with other people in person and get to learning and get to taking action. Hope to see you there.
Very cool. Again, we won't make it down from Norfolk to either of those, but I do hope that all of you who can make it do. It's very important that we nip this in the bud. All right. Gizzard Gary, we didn't hear a whole lot from you, but I'm assuming you're still there and you're not chat napping, so thanks for joining us, pal.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, and I gotta tell you, I'm just impressed by the amount of people from Nebraska that's in this chat. If I had half the organization skills you do, I'd have a heck of a following, man. I mean, really, you had a bunch of them out there. You had their ear. You've had their input. Excellent chat tonight. All I got to say is keep up the good work, man.
Thanks, Gary. And I tell you what, Gary just set the example for those of you who don't have a whole lot to say, but you still want to show up at the Capitol and sign in and just be counted. You don't have to talk to show your support. And Gary shows up almost every week. Doesn't always say a whole lot because that's just his nature. He's not a super loud-spoken fella, but he's here to support me, and I love you for it, Gary. Thanks for being my neighbor down there. Next
you
up,
bet. Anything else? Let me know.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. And go check out gizzardgary.com for all the ways you can find Gary. He'll show you how to give him the bird. All right.
Thank you.
Squib, thanks for hanging out with us. I know that this was kind of Nebraska centric, and you think that nobody else in the country knows where we are, but Mike Bloomberg does.
I'm going to leave that one alone. Good night, Nebraska.
Thanks for being here, pal. Travis, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem, man. I appreciate the invite. Cheap plug. Check out my YouTube channel, Travis P11. Guys, make sure you get involved. And then also, it was very cool seeing all these folks from Nebraska watching the podcast this evening. And I kind of feel like we're kind of connecting, and that's awesome. And and also on the panel, check out people on this panel. They got great content out there for you. Otherwise, that's it, man. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, and thanks for being here. Duke Liberty, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for the invite. Great panel. Learned a lot tonight, so really appreciate it.
That's right. And that's just the thing. You might not be from Nebraska, but you don't want this happening in your state. If it hasn't already, it's not too late. So thanks for being here. Rich White, thanks for joining us, sir.
Yep, no problem. If I got something to say, I'll say it. So,
that's right. Yeah, I wasn't worried.
Yeah. But Sunday night, check out my show This Week Unloaded over on the Unlimited Media channel. And following that, Midnight Range is going to have on his show the owner of a company called Cossaint Arms. They are a new company that's going to be making a custom 1911 where they have a steel frame, but the grip module itself is made out of polymer to make it more 1911 more carry friendly. I got a chance to handle one of those at the Great American Outdoor Show this past weekend in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and they are a very well-made handgun, very comfortable in the hand. So be sure to check out his show immediately following mine Sunday night on the Midnight Range TM channel.
Awesome. Check that out. All right, Jim Burgess, thanks for sneaking in here and helping out and running down a bunch of those links for us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite, guys.
You betcha. All right, Rod, thanks for joining us and lending your expertise and your summarization skills.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a great show tonight. Got a great panel. The only thing I have to say in closing is don't take anything for granted. Use your voice, be heard.
Absolutely true. All righty. And then last but certainly not least, the guy that made it to where this many people could all get on this panel at the same time, thanks to guntube.org. Go check that out. If YouTube ever completely kicks us off and won't let us talk about anything that's gun related, guntube.org is going to be the place where all of the gun content that you want can be posted with no censorship on the gun content anyway. So Night Strike, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for sending me the invite. And I saw the GunTube patch. I approve.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man. That's a lovely one. You got one just like. Are you copying me? You copied my patch.
This is the first one that was sent out. I've got the first one.
That's awesome.
I've even got the originals that G-Web's made by hand. So.
Serial number 001. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, but in all seriousness, Night Strike is the guy that came up with the website. He hosts it, and if anybody wants to go support him and keep guntube.org on the interwebs, that would be great. All right, and one thing I do want to say, I've said this before, and it's not always that popular of an opinion, but I'm here to tell you that the people in Virginia kind of brought this upon themselves. The whole situation in Virginia could have been avoided if more people would have gotten out in November and voted, and they would not have had a color change from red to blue. They wouldn't be in the boat they're in. Now they're panicking because the horses are already out of the barn. Now they're trying to close the barn door and get the horses rounded back up when all they had to do was lock it in the first place and not let them out. I don't want Nebraska to go through the same thing. Let's lock the barn door, not let the horses out, not let our state go the way of Virginia, keep it red. We are the big red nation. Come on, guys. We don't want big red nation to become blue, do we? But that only happens if we all talk about it. We raise awareness, we educate our fellow Nebraskans, and we get out and vote. That's the most important part. So that's been your public service announcement for the night. I would like to thank everybody that joined us out there in the chat. I saw a lot of new names. I saw a lot of names that I don't even see on Facebook. So thank you so much, all of you for joining us. Hopefully you will subscribe to the channel and you'll join us every week now. We do this every Tuesday night at this time. It's not always something that is talking about our laws, but the way that this is coming up, I wanted to get this out here. Since my my invited guest wasn't able to make it this week that I had planned on, we'll get her rescheduled. But we've got some other stuff coming up here in weeks to come that I think is going to be great stuff for these live podcasts. So we'll keep it going. And my list of people out there in the chat is longer, almost by half than what it normally is. So out there in the chat, I'm going to read the Nebraskans off first. My wife was nice enough. Those of you that said that you were from Nebraska, she marked you on the list here. So Carvings by Levi, Richard Hirsch, Pat Hirsch, Jay Brown, 10X Shooters, Justin Gibbons, SS Pawn, Tim Donahue, Colin Overman, 50 Cal, Defense Dad. Go check out Defense Dad. He has got some awesome videos. He lives, I believe, in Lincoln, and he's got a channel about how it is to be a dad that's learning to shoot and learning to be able to defend his family. Zach was out there, Brett Kersey, Ryan Fisher, John Harrion, Eddie Walker, Husker XD, Christopher Westover, and Tracy Preston for Nebraskans. The rest of you, we're not done yet. Thanks for being here, Grim90, Gizzard Gary, Gun Loving Grandpa, Guitar Man Pete, Midnight Range TM, Rich White, Agorizer, Jim Burgess, Boob Sweat Leads to Pearl Necklaces, Travis P11 should have been mentioned as a Nebraskan, Seven Wonders, Two Live Moo, Chug-a-Lug, I think was a Nebraskan as well, Blitz, Mike, Patricia Harold is a Nebraskan, Dangerous Freedom, Patriot in the Dark, the 402 Outdoorsman used to be a Nebraskan, Idaho, and I think he still is at heart. Idaho Rogers USMC, Calaveras 32 Special, Blue Steel 44, Ghost Tactical, Keith Gregory, Clint Taurus, Scott P79, Zone Fighter 1, Kevin the Tack Daddy, New York Outcast, C4 Defense, and Ozzy Osbourne. I have not had to read that many names ever on one of these. This has got to be the biggest panel or the biggest list of people commenting in the live chat I've ever had. I love it. On behalf of Night Strike, Rod Moeller, Jim Burgess, Rich White, Duke Liberty, Travis P11, Squibload, Gizzard Gary, Trish Harold, Stephanie Schaefer, Sandhills Sweetheart, and myself, we love you. Thank you very much for joining us. This is super important to us here in the state of Nebraska. Hopefully it's important to you as well. We don't have a channel or a Facebook page without all of you supporting us. So please spread the word. Let everybody know that they can find this kind of info here. If you liked what you saw and what you heard, share the heck out of it. Thumb it up. If you want to support us with some money, go to patreon.com, but we don't require it. We would do this for free. We are doing it for free. So it's not a money-making venture. It would just be nice to be able to get a little bit to cover some of the expenses of the equipment. We love you. God bless you all. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget to get off my lawn.
Adios, Felicia.